Very good. Okay, good morning. This webinar is happening in our moving forward with our precognition program, Applied Precognition Project. Has been going now for, I don't know, we've been over a year, I think. And we're doing, I think, fantastically well with all of our groups. But it's my belief, and that's what we're going to be talking about here, that it's time to up the game a bit and see if we can get our long-term hit rates up from where they are now, around 60%-ish, up to the next level, 70%, 80%. And that's really the focus of what I want to talk about here, is what do we kind of as a group believe, and the group of those of us here right now, because I want this to be a discussion, because there's no magic here. It's not like there are any answers to getting to the long-term hit rate that we know work for sure, because we've never really done it. We're in brand new territory. And so a lot of what you hear is going to start from where I'm coming from, but I believe it's really important for you to get into where you're coming from. Now, right now, we are doing very good at this rate, and we've had a lot of conversations in earlier webinars about the fact that at this level, you in fact can make money. But what about going higher? Now, here's my conjecture, and it was just hard to put this into words, so I want to make sure you get this. What I want to call strong beliefs. Now, what do I mean by strong beliefs? This would be measured by something like a personal, internal feeling that you have, deep down, intellectual, in your gut, that the probability of that belief, in fact, is true. Okay, that's what I mean by strong beliefs. The ultimate in strong beliefs is what you would call an absolute knowing. And I believe the strongest knowing is what you're experiencing right now. You know you're having that experience. You have strong memories of the past. Those aren't as strong as what you know about this moment. Okay. You know, if you assume in arithmetic some basic principles, you know maybe 2 + 2 = 4. And you believe that's true. So there's a whole spectrum. But this idea of knowing and a spectrum is really quite important, this idea of what you believe. Now, a lot of what we believe is really subconscious. We don't really know and don't always pay attention to our belief systems. Our actions, though, are clearly based on what we believe. And often, by observing ourselves, observing our actions, we will understand more about our beliefs. And so actions and beliefs are very, very closely related. In terms of the key questions that we asked that got us all here, we were asking a question of how high can your personal long-term hit rate be? Versus how high will it be? So this was sort of theoretical, and 44% of us said 90 to 100%, and I was in that group personally. I really believe the universe is put together without a built-in particular limit on precognition. The limits in my belief system are the practical ones because we're human beings, but I believe the universe will allow it. I may or may not be right. One of the things I'm very interested in is, in fact, actualizing that and making that happen. But that's me. How high will an individual's personal long-term hit rate be? And this went lower, okay? From 8, we got down to 5. Notice the 7 is the same. What I suspect happened is 2 people went down. One might have gone down to 80, 90%. One went lower, or more than one went lower. So there were 3 people who went down, and we can see that this went up to here. And that's quite reasonable in terms of what will actually happen for one reason or other. But these numbers do show, and it makes sense, that within our community, we believe these hit rates can be high, and will be high, which is very nice, very encouraging, part of our belief systems. So now the issue is, how do we get there? And I want to define what...
Before you get to this, I think I would like to talk about something else.
Okay.
I would like to ask you the question, what is the title of the talk again?
Beliefs, beliefs, confidence, protocols, and long-term hit rates.
Okay, well, that's a good thing. So my question is, why do you want to get a hit rate of over 80%?
Because I am personally quite interested in participating in society, appreciating that the world of consciousness is not flat, that precognition is real and can be integrated within society.
And why can't you do that with a hit rate of 65%?
Too difficult, much easier to do at 80%.
Oh, it is, huh?
In my opinion, absolutely. And then people will start doing it themselves. At 65%, well, that's my belief. That's my belief.
Well, my belief is that 65% is an incredibly high hit rate for what we're doing. It's much better than anyone else has done anything like this before. And in fact, we're already almost at 60%, where that is also true. And if we spend a lot more time celebrating that and seeing how much money we can make doing that and getting recognition for that and publishing the data that we have already, we can go a long way toward realizing goals of changing society.
Okay. Hey, that's great, Tom. And I think I have no problem with that belief system. That's terrific. We disagree. And I believe that some of us that are going to want to maybe train or improve or do whatever to improve our hit rate can be doing that along with those of you that are going to be more focusing on the wagering stuff and be happy at 60, 65%. I mean, one of the things about beliefs is with the belief system that you just put forth, it's likely, in my opinion, that you will stay at 60, 65%.
No, because, well, number one, that's not that important to me what the hit rate is. The thing that's important to me is that I feel good about what I'm doing, that I'm personally enriching myself and at the same time being a great influence on society and people understanding that this stuff is really real. That's the important thing, not what a number says on a piece of paper.
Okay, well, that's fine. And certainly as part of app, we want to advertise and continue doing what we're doing. So I don't see any
Well, one
doing
thing I
both of
think we
those.
do need to focus on more is getting out the word about what our past results are, because they are so good. For instance, I really think you should consider publishing your past data, which, you know, as I showed on one of those charts, you had
Yeah.
1 year worth of data where the odds were 3 million to 1 against chance, and you don't seem to think that's very important, but I think it is extremely important to publish
About
that data.
before I got into this, you should know I did a study where it was 3 million to 1. People are not, in my opinion, looking at numbers like that in any way that's meaningful. The scientific community, as you know, have already done things at 1 million to 1 odds. Dean Radin has all kinds of books out on that. So do
Well,
others.
I disagree with you. I think it is changing, and it's changing slowly, of course, because things are so entrenched, and a lot of science people don't want to look at it, but they're being forced to do it now. It just
Okay.
has to happen, and I mean, that's the kind of thing that convinces people, is publishing things in peer-reviewed journals.
Okay. And the scientists, the guys who are willing to put in the time that way are doing it. I hope when, you know, the time is right, you're going to do that. I know that's one of the things you want to do. That's fine. You put your time in there. That's just not where I want to put my time. Okay. So, okay. So, um, this is one example of how we all have different belief systems and whether or not it's important to go for 80% or not, I believe will influence how an individual will, you know, where they'll put their energy and how hard they'll work in terms of getting to a higher hit rate versus spreading the word about how great 65% is and paying more attention to making money on with the 65%, et cetera, et cetera.
But see, my view is that you will get the 80% faster if you do appreciate where you are more, instead of thinking that you have broken protocols or the wrong people or you're not doing the right thing. Those are the things that are never going to get you to 80%.
Certainly the negative
Appreciate
world.
the successes that you have. We have tremendous success doing this.
Tom, I agree with that. And I just want more success, that's all. If you're putting any of this in the context of negativity, then you're hurting yourself. And I will actually get to that.
But see, you're reading that into what I'm saying, Marty. That's not the way I feel about it at all.
I know
That's the way you feel about it.
That's what you just put on me. I don't feel about it that way.
You just said that.
And see, your laugh is just such an interesting indicator of something. I don't know exactly why. Let me move on, Tom, okay? This is not the time for us to argue. I'm glad you shared your belief, and they're different than mine. And that's one of the points. Everybody has different beliefs. And I don't think we can convince other people. We can talk about them, but what matters is their own internal beliefs. And these people are showing what they believe is possible. And I want to now define in kind of a working way what I believe are meaningful terms. When I say long term, one of the questions I got from one of the participants was, what do you mean by long term? So I want to define that. I think if you were to start out and you got, say, 20 out of 25 hits, and all of these are at the 80% hit rate, if you got 20 out of 25, I would call that short term, even though the odds versus chance of doing that are quite good. Medium is 40 out of 50, and I want to say long term is 100. The chances of doing 80 out of 100 is odds. Now, I'm at the point in my journey where this is frankly meaningless. What really matters to me is the issue of this percentage. Obviously, some people disagree with that, but that's how I feel. When I say long term, this means you've been in this for 100 times. You made 100 predictions, no passes. This is reasonable because if you were to do 60 out of 100, if you're in a 60% category, which is about where we are now, after 100 of these, okay, 60% is darn good. Probability is 34 to 1. So there could be some element of chance there, but you're doing quite well at a long term of 60. So that's fine. That's great. 70, obviously you're not at chance. You get up to 80%. This is now part of your life. You have now integrated this at this level. I now want to show you what I mean by the long term versus the short term. I've had examples myself, and through the years we've seen other people who have had similar type examples up in the teens. I think somebody once had something like 20 basically hits in a row, but I have one which is 14. But this graph shows I think something very significant. So this is number of sessions. In this case, it does include passes. So the 100 here does include a certain number of passes. But what this shows is what's been typical history, which is what I'm trying to do even better at, even though, as I say, this is great. But how can we do better? Starting out good, ending off at a 66% hit rate over the long term. Here we are, number of sessions, another person, and
wait a minute. May I ask on a previous graph?
Yeah.
If this is real data, I take it?
This is real data.
And is this a group or what?
This is real data going back when I did that study before I jumped into this with both feet. I did a study with various people, and this is that result. I've actually reported on this. I can give you the report. Where I publish is on my PIA site. And, I've shown a lot of this stuff at workshops and things like this. Here, it is interesting, since I went back to this. This is hit rate. In those days, I was calling it success rate. But the meaning of success is now much, much broader. It includes things like what Tom was talking about, really feeling good about what you're doing and all of that, making money, wagering. But this is, in fact, hit rate. And
but my point is going to be this hit rate is higher than what we're doing now, so we could learn something from this. How was it done? I mean, what?
This was standard binary. This was back when I was doing standard binary.
Okay, so this is self-judged or what?
No. This was independently judged.
So this is several viewers? How many viewers?
This is one viewer. I'll show you an example.
Viewer.
This is one viewer. This is another viewer. Here, same study. Here you can see, and this is one of the points I always want to make here, is you can see this person started out relatively poorly, and this is cumulative. Okay, so you understand that. After 20, this was her success rate, 45%. She hung in there, ended off same level. Here, viewer M went out further. So this was what we were looking at before. But what I've introduced, because I have done lots and lots of these, this idea, which is a 25 trading day success rate. So this green ignores passes. So in here, for example, she actually got up to an 80% success rate, hit rate, with her last 25 non-passes averaged, and then she had several passes here. So that's the way this stays flat, because it'll always change if you get a hit or a miss. So these were passes in here. But you can see that for 25, within 25, she got up to the 80%. But then what's happening typically, and we see this to this day, and we have not gotten past this, is you go up and down, and then for whatever reason, and I put reason in quotes, went back down to 50%. And so if you're wagering, this is why we all have to be very, very careful in what wagering strategy we use, because here you are and you will always see dips like this.
Russ is writing a lot of stuff you need to read.
Why don't you tell me what I should answer or something?
I don't understand. Why can't you read it?
Because I want to go on. I mean, if it's important, then ask it as a question or something.
I'm talking about Russ in the chat box.
I understand. He's making comments, and that's fine if you want to read the comments. But if there's a question there, I'd like somebody just to repeat the question. But if it's a comment, read it. Okay, I want to go on. Now, so here, you now understand this idea of how, notice these now all qualify for long term. Even with all the passes, she was well over 100. And the other examples got into this for the long term. They set up a rhythm, integrated in their life. I now want to use another example from another field. We, at least most of us, I think remember a time, well, maybe some of you don't. Some of you are young enough that you may not remember, but there was a time when there were experts out there who were saying that you could never run a 4-minute mile, that it was impossible. And they gave all kinds of reasons about how strong the body could be, and you just couldn't go that fast, et cetera, lung capacity, whatever reasons they gave, intellectual reasons, it couldn't be done. Well, it turned out that on May 6, 1954, Roger Bannister, in fact, broke the 4-minute mile. And then it turned out very shortly thereafter, barely a year after, someone else ran it, and now it's, of course, common. What does this mean for us? It's just funny how I find things at just the right time to make the points I want to make. Here's the point here. Remember, this was written by somebody else, but I'm in total resonance with this point. The point is this. It took a sense of extreme certainty. Now, this is extreme certainty within Roger Bannister. He had the belief system. He felt at a very, very high level that this was doable. Extreme certainty for Bannister to do what was considered undoable. He alone was able to create that certainty in himself without seeing any proof that it could be done. In himself. This was a personal, psychological thing that he established in himself to do this. That's the kind of mindset which gets belief systems to become real, to actualize. So I think that's a very relevant and important example. Okay, I want to show you two more examples of the previous work with these kind of graphs. Tom is eventually going to get graphs similar to this sort of thing for the within app, but this one here is just a really, really interesting one in my opinion. The red is cumulative. The green is again the 25-day one, but what I did here is it starts at 50%, so that was the assumption, and then I did some sort of average. So even before 25, this goes down, but at 25 it's then accurate. But this person, I had a conversation with him. It's the first time I saw a person doing this kind of work, and I talked to him and I said, hey, you know, this is very improbable by chance. What's going on here? I have no problem with this. You don't have to change anything. I'm going to reverse your predictions. We talked about it. He thought about it. He came back to me, and this is a quote. And I remember the quote because I have not heard the word ornery in a very, very long time. And he said, I'm an ornery person. Okay, I am ready to view the correct target. Right here he said it. And look what happened. His 25-day average went up to over 75%. He eventually hit 80%, again, for only 25 days. And for reasons which I guess we don't have to go in, we won't go into now, he pulled out and stopped. I don't know, he was a very good viewer, but for personal reasons, anyway, he stopped. But I think you hopefully are getting the point here. What's going on with you internally influences mightily your hit rate. And that's that example. Now I want to give one other example, which is a group example. Here I called it a club. But it was a group of 5 people, and these had this. I don't have a 25-day one, but you get the point here. At this point in time, we were actually investing now. This group and I were investing as a group. I don't remember the fine details now. This stuff was well over 10 years ago. In any case, there is an email which was written by one of the members right here, and the email to the group talked about how if we continue to do this well, okay, the funds continue to double, because we had just doubled here, we will all be rich. And then we had this fall. Now, this doesn't prove that the issue of money, the issue of anticipating or whatever, I don't know what it means. I believe it's more than a coincidence. I can't prove it. I'm pointing out again and trying to sensitize you to the fact that internal beliefs, in fact, play themselves out mightily in the measure which I think is a very important measure, namely the hit rate. Now, let me talk about something closer to home about beliefs and attitudes. What do you believe about a good target? We have spent a lot of time, and I know we're going to continue to spend a lot of time about what a good target is. Do you believe the targets need to be totally blind without any front loading? None at all. Is it okay to have a little front loading? Does it have to be something which you can relate to in your day-to-day life? Does it have to be something which you believe you're good at viewing? Does it have to be relatively simple? Does it have to be relatively complex? All of these have come up in conversations with different people. Does it have to be interesting? I happen to think maybe it does, just to keep people for the long term, but not by a definition of a good target. That's why I added that. Guess what my point is here? It may very well be that if you believe a target has to be a certain way, you're opening yourself up to being disappointed, to having negative feelings, that you're not going to do as well, because to do well, the target has to be a certain way, and the protocol is not satisfying the way you believe it needs to be. It's these belief systems that can influence you so mightily. Built in with all of this is, how confident are you in your own personal protocol? And by personal, we have various protocols now, as you all know. You're involved in one protocol or another. But deeper than that protocol are things like, what do you do for your cool down personally? What are the thoughts that are going on as you're doing the protocol? What are going on in the rest of your life when you think about this? It's what's going on inside you, which is much broader than the detailed protocol that we write down. How comfortable are you in all this? This is an important consideration. From an interview with Joe, how much of psi talent do you think is really a matter of psychology, allowing, accepting psi? Basically, he said all of it. And that comes from knowing it is real, not believing it to be so. And he used the word knowing. I think what he meant in terms of what we're talking about here is very, very high probability that it is true. And I think he would know that he can continue to get a very high hit rate. One other point I want to make here, which you're going to have to look at in terms of what you believe, but he obviously believes, well, the question is, do you still practice RV outside of formally doing it? How much RV do you do a week? How much practice? How much task? Well, he says, I practice all the time. He uses the word practice here, I believe, like a doctor practices. I probably do 5 or 6 targets a week between practiced and tasked. It's probably about 1/3 practice and 2/3 tasked. His 1/3 practice is he does envelopes, which he puts in, and then he puts in questions of interest to him, and he then chooses those and does sessions. So they're still blind. He's a great believer in blind. In his internal belief system, everything should be pretty much blind and not front-loaded, and that's what he does. Now, this gets to what you believe. Do you believe doing it all the time, integrating this within your life in a big way, doing this almost every day? He believes it's important. He does this. You're going to have to figure out what you believe and then integrate that and be consistent with it. I believe, and you've all heard me emphasize this before, how important feedback is. We all know it's not 100% necessary, because there are plenty of examples out there where people have not done feedback and they've had good sessions, haven't gotten feedback in the usual sense. But let me ask you, do you believe that information can be shared from the future, from your feedback session? How important do you believe the feedback session can be? Can you make it important or not? Is it less important than your remote viewing session? About the same? Maybe more important, because that's where the truth is? That's where you know the truth for sure? And this is the key question, which I think each of us has to ask ourselves. Are your actions consistent with this belief? So, do you really believe, are your actions, all of this comes down to, do you believe that you can improve your hit rate by paying more attention to your feedback target? Well, if you do, do it. Take actions consistent with your beliefs. If you don't believe that, then you probably aren't doing it already. Terrific. But one of the things that I've seen in talking to people is that when you talk to them, they will tell you that they believe, yeah, feedback is important, but they don't necessarily pay a lot of time and attention to it. They don't think about what can I do to even make it better and stuff like that. Do you believe you can communicate with your future self? Okay, a future self that has an 80% long-term hit rate. Now, obviously you're not going to pay any attention to that if that's not important to you. But if it's important to you and you believe that there's a future you out there which has this 80% hit rate, you know what? I believe you can communicate with that very future self, just like you're communicating with your own feedback. Do it. Meditate on it. Take actions consistent with your beliefs. And guess what? You can change your beliefs. They're not static. They got developed over time. They can be modified, just like your actions can be modified. I want to give you another one that I think is very important. In an interview, Joe indicated he believes cool down is very important. He said, and this is a quote, 75% of the discipline, 75% in his opinion of the remote viewing discipline, he was talking about remote viewing now, not ARV, but he was talking about remote viewing, 75% of the discipline has to do in cool down, which is getting into this state where you feel you're really connected. I wish I had talked about this with him at the workshop, but we still have an opportunity to do that if we want to.
Marty, if I can make a comment here, I think we need to distinguish between, especially with Joe, between RV and ARV, because in ARV, Joe sees it as much simpler, I think, and since you only have to distinguish between two pictures instead of finding a missing person, when he was doing, I was one of the viewers that he was tasking for some of the ARV things, and all he did was he said, okay, here's a pen and a paper, and he says, target, write down whatever comes into your mind. And so there was no cool down at all, is what he was giving us. So.
Interesting. I remember that. Well, as I said, this was for
part of that
viewing.
may have just been because of the workshop, scenario.
Environment,
it's hard to do that, but in general, he thinks it's much easier to do ARV than what he's talking about. So maybe cool down is not that important for us, is my point.
Well, and I understand, and this was clearly a
personal thing too, of course. I mean, it may just be different for him. It's easy for him, may not be easy for us, and we do need to cool down, maybe so.
Okay, and this statement was made in the context of remote viewing. I consider the first stage of ARV to be remote viewing. It is a remote viewing session. How much cool down you need to get up to whatever percentage you think is important, 80%, 70%, 60% is unknown. But my main point here is we all understand the idea of getting rid of what's going on in the rest of your life for the time you're doing the remote viewing aspect of the ARV and clearing out the day-to-day thoughts and quieting down to a certain extent. How important do each of us believe that is? He believes it was 75% of the discipline to get to a place where he was ready to go. He used to take 45 minutes. Now he's down to 5 minutes. Who knows, maybe less. But the other thing which I think was very important here and is important to recognize as a possible thing to pay attention to is he's able to get to a place where he knows he's ready to go. I mean, that's why it's important to him. He gets there and he gets the feeling and then, okay, I can go. He's just has he gets to a place where there's a knowing. In fact, he gave an example at the workshop where he knew he was on target. This was while he was giving results, and he said, I knew I was there and I had to stop. This was during a TV program. I don't remember the fine details now. But he was able to have a sense of knowing that he was on target, which a lot of people don't believe is possible. I've heard people say that's impossible. In fact, one of the classical statements that a lot of people make is the viewer is the last to know. I don't think Joe would agree with that. But what you believe about that sort of thing, and you're beginning to, hopefully you already have the essence of my message here, is what you believe is absolutely critical. What you believe is important. You need to be consistent with that in what you do. What you believe about intention, attention, and expectation. And watch yourself in terms of your actions, and so that you can really understand how deeply you believe that your intention is important. How much attention do you pay to yourself, to what your inner subconscious is giving you during your remote viewing session? How much attention do you pay during your feedback session? What are your expectations? Are your expectations for your, well, I don't always want to get back to the 65% versus 80%, but yes, that is part of it. But also, what is your expectation for this next one, and which is a short-term expectation? What is your expectation for the intermediate term? And what is your expectation for the long term? Are you really going to be an 80%er? Do you really want to be an 80%er for the long term? An 80%er will make you, I believe, a somewhat different person. You're at the 80% level, your life is going to be different, in my opinion. But you need to get at what does that feel like when you do a session. When you do 10 sessions, it's very likely you're going to get 8 of them correct. It's going to be a lot of interest out there. You could do a lot of that personally. There will probably be a lot of people that might be seeking your advice. It's different. Your life will probably be different. Are you up to that? Do you want that? I once had a person, and this was remarkable, who was able to say, because at a workshop I had asked people to get into what that felt like and did they really want it? And this person said that they really got into, they did not want it because they were afraid that it was going to cause them to get very rich, they were going to be very wealthy, and they were going to start fooling around with pretty women, and it would cause his marriage to break up and ruin his family life. Isn't that interesting? Got in touch with that. That person got in touch with a deep part of themselves that was always at play. Maybe that was one of the things which is stopping him from getting to 80%. I don't know. All conjecture, but it's all what's going on. It's all psychological. It all has to do with attitude and harmony. I believe that with respect to any RV protocol, I believe it's more important for viewers and judges to have a positive attitude, okay, more important than the details of the specific RV protocol, that you have a positive attitude towards it, that you enjoy what's going on, and that you feel in harmony with, if you're doing this as a solo protocol, your own beliefs. If you're doing this in a group, the whole group is involved. And you have to feel this harmony with the beliefs, the actions, and your own personal protocol, each of the members of the group. I think this is more important than the specifics of the RV protocol. I spent so many years now, I practically had hair when I started getting interested in this and doing different protocols. The latest protocol, the 1ARV protocol, I still think it is a fabulous protocol. I think it's a protocol which gives you the ability to learn and do all kinds of good stuff. But you want to know something? I think a binary protocol, I even believe a self-judging protocol now is one which can get up to the same kind of high hit rates. I happen to think it might be harder, but I believe that. I don't know that. But I believe a person who is dedicated to it, and in fact, Lynn Buchanan once said this to me about self-judging. He said, I just don't want to have to go through and learn how to do self-judging. So I just want to, don't want to see the other target. But he believed that he could do it. Okay, and you know what? I believe he could have done it too. But he isn't interested in it. So it's this internal part of it that is the most important aspect. Now, feeling in harmony with your beliefs, actions, watching yourself, all the things that we're talking about. And frankly, I believe most of you know this internally, know that most of this have a sense of what feels right for you. And it may not be exactly what I said, but you understand at some level what it would take to improve your own hit rate. And it's this consistency. It's being in harmony with it, and being able to take actions and taking those actions to bring you in more and more harmony, which will get you there. And having that feeling most of the time is the objective. The more time, the better. I'm going to stop. And I'd love to get some comments and feedback from all of you.
Hi, Marty. Can I jump in first?
Please do.
Okay. One of the things that I found discouraging, and I'm relatively new at this, but I understand that confidence is very important, belief's very important. But what really discouraged me was displacement. I'd hit I'd hit what appeared to be the wild card, great, and then the target. But the problem is that they were switched, and then I think, well, I can't possibly do anything about it. Displacement seems to have its own will associated with it, and that was something that I found discouraging.
Okay.
Is it a fair question?
It happens, in my opinion, to be a angle of the most difficult question we all face.
Yeah.
And that is, I always put it at the level of misses. Looking a miss straight in the face and saying, yeah, I missed. And wanting to, and here's my answer to that, is looking into yourself and trying to learn something from it is the response. Yeah. I have not come up with anything better. And that doesn't mean there isn't something better out there for you than the answer, which is, okay, what can I learn from this?
Yeah.
And I believe that displacement has been around a long time.
It could be, sorry if I interrupt, but I'm just throwing this out there. It could be, it's just like your friend who wanted to fail, is that there's an unconscious desire to get it wrong.
Well, exactly. That is beautiful, Gordon. And looking in yourself and seeing if you can find that. In other words, I once did a meditation, again, this was a long time ago, where I kind of asked, why did I do that to myself? In other words, I accept total responsibility in causing that miss on purpose. Okay? And I got an answer for that particular one. I don't even remember what it is. I'm not one of those people that remembers all the specifics. I'm in the process of integrating all this and trying to get better and better at it. What I'm doing now is trying to get better and better at judging. My focus now is on judging, and then when I have an opportunity to remote view, I'm trying to get better at that too, but more of my focus is on judging because that's an important part of this. Until you viewers get up to 80%, then the judge has, well, maybe no. Maybe it's going to be a team effort, actually. I don't know how we're going to get to 80%, frankly.
Yeah.
But clearly when viewers like you ask questions like that and then pursue it, what does it take to reduce this kind of displacement? That's what's going to improve things from where we are.
Okay. And I have another question, maybe a bit off topic, is when you consider all the groups that are under the APP big group, is there a standard for how the judging is going? Because I just mentioned is that in the Verve group, when Chris left and Patrick took over, I mean, he changed it completely. He changed the protocols.
Correct.
Yeah. Now, is there a standard that judges should be following, or can he do that?
The standard is the group manager is basically in charge of that. So when Chris changed, when Chris left and gave the group managership, is that a word?
Yeah.
But you know what I mean, up, and Patrick took it over, he then became the group manager, and yes, he changed the protocol. So I guess that was a practical example, and yes, that is the way app is working now. Hopefully he explained the changes and all of that as he went along, but perhaps in the future we could be more formal about that. Anyway, I appreciate that. That is in fact what happened.
Okay. Okay.
You know, since you mentioned him being, I just wanted to point out that Patrick did document his protocol. I asked him to do it, and he did do it.
Okay.
If you want to see it, I can certainly send it to you.
Okay. Yeah. Could you please? I'm at. If you see my, you probably see my email on some of the list. It's Gordon.McClellan.
Yeah, I got it. I'll send it to you.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
And you should know, as app is getting more and more mature, you know, we're still in our infancy here. All of those kind of protocols will all be available online. All of that's becoming part of the database, and all of that will be available.
Okay. Now, Tom, if I can ask you this, and I know Patrick's not here to discuss it, and I would bring this up if he was here, is when he changed it or when he came on board, were you flexible enough to say, okay, whatever the group manager wants will work? Or do you have protocols that you prefer? Because I know you've been around for a while. Is there something that, would you choose a group that had the protocols that you like? Or would you just leave it up to the group manager?
Well, certainly I would. You're talking about me personally as a viewer now? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would certainly only be in a group where I was comfortable with the protocol, yes.
Okay.
And I'll go even further, and I think maybe App has not said this enough. And in fact, I'm not even sure Tom and I have discussed this the way I'm about to say it. But I believe that if a person begins to get a negative feeling towards the protocol, towards the group, towards whatever's happening, that person ought to look to another group. I don't believe a person should feel wedded to a group.
Okay.
But I believe there needs to be this needs to be done in a wise way, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
You can't do it after the group has 2 or 3 misses. That's not very wise. When you get into a group, you know, yeah, you ought to get in and feel good about it, and you want to be an active participant, but I don't think that means undying loyalty. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay. Okay, yeah, I just wanted to know if there was a standard, and yeah, that question was answered.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
Okay.
Russ has a lot of comments if you guys want to look at the comments.
Okay.
Are there any questions in there that I need to respond to?
Yes.
Okay.
I haven't read it though.
Okay. Russ, ask one now, and I will...
Well, right now he's talking about how we can make passes look real good. Okay, I guess they're not really questions.
Okay.
Okay, he said no, just thoughts.
Okay, well, good. I mean, he's sharing, you know, and I think it's important for us to share our own individual beliefs about what we think is important, and then other people need to look at them, but be their own individual, you know, judge on that.
I actually think Russ has brought up a good point here, which I wanted to bring up too. So if we can talk about that now.
Sure.
That is, as I showed at the conference on that slide, well, actually Alexis is the one that did the analysis. We can narrow down our criteria for making predictions to make 80% now, but then we will have to pass like 3/4 of the predictions is the only issue with that. So when you say get to 80%, you mean what? I mean, you mean that you want to do it with all the sessions that we do, and it also obviously depends on the judge, right? Because the judge is the one that decides whether there's a prediction or not, right? So you have one judge that would say it was 5-3 in favor of the over, and another judge would say it was 4-4 and a tie, and you're obviously going to have a big difference there.
Right. But what it comes down to, when I say 80%, I meant by group, and I include a group being one person who does self-judging. I have no problem calling that a group. In fact, if somebody came to me and said they want to become part of that because they think we're terrific, I'm terrific, I can do this all by myself, I've done it in the past, and I now want to have you guys document it, I'd have no problem with them being a group of one. So with that definition of a group, when I say 80%, I mean a group. Now, so far, we have not had a group who has taken into account what Alexis pointed out. In other words, it turned out to be one of my groups. He pointed out that, I'm not sure it was one, it might have been multiple, but it doesn't matter. He pointed out that if I were to wait until the CRs were over 2.5 or something like that, I did in fact have an 80% hit rate. Now that's
what I was talking about. We showed that slide at the conference.
I understand, and that's retrospective, looking at it in the past. We have not yet shown, and I haven't made the decision yet as a group manager to go forward for the medium term even, to put that to the test. I would love for some group to do that. So it just hasn't been tested.
Actually, that data that he used for that was only through the end of 2012, so we can certainly test the 2013 data with it.
Right, and that may convince me or somebody else to go ahead and do it. But it just hasn't been done yet, that's all.
Well, yeah, but you have to consider the big problem is that they're going to be passing 3/4 of the time, and that means in order to, get enough predictions per month to wager on, you're going to have to get a lot more sessions, so that's an issue.
That is an issue, and that's why I haven't done it yet, because I think people will lose interest. So there's the practical thing of putting it all together, and that is part of our challenge, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, my point in general was you can maybe get to higher hit rates just by mining the data and finding out what gives you higher hit rates, and that helps you wagering too, because then you just bet on the things, bet more money on the ones that give you higher hit rates. However, you have to be extremely careful doing that you're doing it based on enough data to draw these conclusions that will project it into the future. And there is also, of course, as you pointed out throughout this talk, that you have to monitor your own self and your own group's vibration is what I call it, about, being positive all the time. Because I do agree, with 99% of what you said in your talk, Marty. I didn't mean to come across as disagreeing, but we don't agree on everything, but I certainly do agree with the basic idea of your talk.
Okay.
Our hit rate is much more dependent on what we individually believe than it is on details of protocols. Maybe we should get other points of view, like Alexis.
All right. Well, I just didn't want to ruin the mood. I totally agree with that belief is important, but I think there's a lot of things that we are doing wrong that's simply mechanical. I don't know if you guys looked at my simulations. Did you guys check out the simulation that I sent out?
I just didn't have time, Alexis. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But tell me.
I'm afraid I haven't either, Alexis. I've been focused on the DVD.
Can I get the screen?
Sure. And this is, for me personally, the way to learn is what we're doing just now, Alexis. Share with me what you've learned from your simulator, and I will make you the presenter. Okay.
All right. So pretty much what I did was I took the numbers that Well, first off, I'm making several assumptions. One assumption is that one out of three things that a remote viewer will say will be just based on chance. And so I took that statistic and sort of
Before, I hate to interrupt. Alexis, but I think what Ed actually said when he said that was 1/3 of what's in your sketch will match 1/3 of the target. Isn't that correct?
what? No, he said 1/3 of what a remote viewer will say will be correct in any given target.
Well, yeah, that's what I just said.
You said sketch, though. You said sketch. Specifically, you said sketch. And then
So you're talking about the words that he writes on the sketch?
yeah. Oh, well, not on the session. The whole session, not just the sketches. Everything that you put down on a session, 1 out of 3 is going to be by chance.
Okay, yeah, well, that's what I meant. I
Okay.
didn't mean to draw a distinction there.
Okay.
But the point is, you said 1/3 of what's in the session will be random, but that's a little different than saying 1/3 of what's in the session will match 1/3 of what's in the target. Do you understand?
Not really, but
Okay, well, anyway, that's
but
No way.
I guess let me continue. So this one right here, this is basically a 10 by 10 grid, and I'm representing that as a 100 perceptions in any given remote viewing session. Basically, every time you press delete, these are all just it's randomized, and so
No, but what is this
Go
a
ahead.
grid of? I don't understand.
the
There's
grid is
10
a
categories?
Say it again.
These are like
This is-
attributes?
Yes,
mean-
these are all perceptions. So this might be red, black, white, smells good. Just a whole bunch of random.
But the reason it's two-dimensional is because the rows are the target and the columns are the session, or what?
No, these are it's just one perception per box. It's just visually more
Oh,
appealing.
so it's really one dimension. You're just putting it in 2 dimensions just because it's too big.
Right.
Okay.
It's just a visual help.
Okay.
So basically, every time you press delete, it generates a theoretical remote viewing session, and out of that, it'll generate what's the chance likelihood that some of them will be correct, and what's the chance likelihood that some of them will be wrong, and
So this is a simulator based on the assumption that 1/3 of it is going to be random. Is that what you mean by this?
yes. It's also an assumption that my previous calculations of looking at all these sessions is that about, I guess, like about 6 to 8% is going to be a strong match.
Oh, so those assumptions are in this too, then, those numbers there?
Right. So,
Okay.
you can look at these numbers and basically it will, if you play around with it, you'll come to the conclusion first that if you look at over here, this is the CR score, the equivalent CR score of the whole session, just based on how many was right, how many was wrong, and what the strongest match was. And so we can see that as we keep making these random sessions, that this number pretty much represents what chance is, or what chance can be. So if you were just randomly making sessions, this number is what you would get by chance.
And it's mostly a 2, which is very satisfying, actually.
Right, and there's this rule that we had, you can only 3.5 is wagerable, and this definitely shows you, that like 3 was the highest it could be. There's no way for it to. Well, I guess. How do I say? there's no way for if you followed like dung beetle, which I'm claiming to be a more definite interpretation of the conference ranking system.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty much the confidence ranking system with defined matching and non-matching values.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much what a dung beetle is. And if you followed strictly to that definition, that for each what am I trying to say? For each rank definition, so like one has some, or what am I trying to say? Let me pull it up. Yeah, here it is. So if we followed these definitions strictly, good correspondence, mixture of correct and incorrect, if we follow that strictly, then the highest we can go is by chance 3. And this pretty much defines what chance is. But what I also wanted to point out is that during judging, sometimes I know you do this, Marty, and Tom. I'm pretty sure you do it too. Is that you look at a session and you're looking for whatever matches or whatever's good, and you guys don't really consider what doesn't match. Am I right? Or you consider it less?
Well,
you don't punish remote viewers for having incorrect data.
I do if there's a lot of it. I mean, I see sessions that are many pages where people write small, and if there's a lot of stuff which is wrong, I will hold that against them, just because then I figure by chance, I mean, I'm doing basically what you're saying here, then I figure by chance there's a better chance that there'll be a match if there's so much stuff.
Right, okay. One of the difficult things that I found when I was judging without exact values is situations like this. That the target was an airplane, and somebody literally said airplane. This is what it means. Like,
Right.
That's an explicit match.
Right.
If I hid this value right here, and I knew it was an explicit match, and I only knew that that was one of the things, what would I have given that session?
Well, if it were to label it airplane, and it was an airplane, and there was a fair number of other things which corroborated it, and it wasn't too long, I'd probably give it a 5 or a 6, especially if there was a sketch that I could interpret roughly as an airplane. And I understand your point. It could be by chance, and that's one of the reasons I get a miss. I mean, so no, I accept that. I wouldn't say that's wrong. I would say that opens up the judge to a miss. Now, whether or not dung beetle, and I'm just trying to understand, if that was one of your points, I don't have any problem with it. I don't see that being anything that the judge is doing wrong. It's a matter of, yes, there's opportunities for making misses because there is a random portion of this at this time. You know, nobody is a 100% good remote viewer yet.
Right. Well,
I
guess
what you're going to I suspect what you're going to demonstrate here, Alexis, is that non-matches are much more important than we think they are. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes. Definitely. I mean, if we didn't know these values right here, and all you knew was it was an explicit match, like somebody said airplane, I mean, just without these data, you're going to give it
A high score.
a higher score than what it deserves.
Yes.
And
But we agree with that. You're doing it in a way which I have great regard for, kind of analytically. And I like that. I do it when I'm a judge, though I mark X's on the ones that are wrong and check marks on the ones that are right. So I automatically get a sense of this, but I don't have quantitative rules like you do. I get a sense, and that's because a check mark, in fact, on my page, I'll make big check marks and little check marks. And I'll make, well, the X's are misses, and I have question marks. And I mean, this general idea is one which I accept. I just don't do it in quite the same analytical way you do, that's all.
Well, in my case, I don't, I mean, as you know, I don't consider stuff that is not a match that heavily, because I assume that it's just the viewer going off on AOLs that have nothing to do with the pictures involved. But if you can convince me otherwise with your data, I'm open to changing the way I judge to take off more points for a non-match, certainly.
well, just mathematically, if we assume that there's a probability that a strong match will occur, if we accept that, that idea, then adding more remote viewers increases that chance. And if you're only looking at what the strong matches are within a session, it's going to inflate scores.
Okay, you must have written that someplace, because I've heard you give that argument before, and I understand that argument. Notice, though, the reason it doesn't hold is because what you said before. In other words, I do look at all of the sessions together as one part of my analysis, as one giant transcript. But if in that giant transcript, as I add more and more transcripts, you know what I mean? I recognize that there is a random chance that I'll get something which is pretty good.
Yes.
And so notice, but I'll also get many more non-matches.
Right.
So, I mean, look, I'm at the position.
Okay.
Okay, I think we both understand each other, and I do take all of that into account as a judge.
I think you do. You definitely do take that into account. I've seen you. I've seen the judging scores and the data that you put out, but I'm claiming that it's not precise enough. It's not the judge. I mean, it's the tool that you guys are using. It's so imprecise, and it's so flexible that errors like this, it's a mechanical thing that we could fix if you simply did it in a systematic fashion.
If we
I
used
understand your
Beetle.
point. Yeah, I understand your point, Alexis. And the real question in my mind is the extra worth it? Is the extra effort all worth it? If you can demonstrate that it is, then I will consider doing this.
Well, we can see right over here. I mean, no matter what the.
I'm talking about with statistics on results.
Okay.
I'm not talking about simulations. I'm talking about data.
And
right. Well, but by simulating it, I'm proving that if you use dung beetle, there's no way that it will rate a session higher than chance if it isn't above chance. I mean, this is what I'm showing right now. But using a systematic effort.
then why aren't you at 100%?
Well, I have a really high hit rate. I mean, I'm doing pretty good than most of the groups.
See, I don't know what your hit rate is. I don't have
my true hit rate. The true hit rate for dung beetle is about 75% right now.
Over how many trials?
Not that many.
Okay, so you're still at the short term.
Right.
And we'll wait. I showed you plenty of examples that were over that for the short term.
Yeah, yes, certainly.
So,
but But I'm showing you a mechanical error that happens within judging that can be fixed. You know, there's a solution already, but people aren't using it, and which is frustrating to me, because I'm putting out all this work and I'm showing that it's, you know, it's actually happening, but nobody uses it, which is frustrating to me, I guess.
You don't mean nobody. You've got a group, so you've got a few believers already.
Okay, well.
But let me respond to this because I mean, I think it's really important. You are in the absolute perfect place. You believe this. You've got some people who are working it and testing it. I understand the logic. I really do. I am not ready to convert, but I will tell you this: as you keep doing this, I am open to converting. I just haven't seen enough data yet. I am a great believer, and I think you are as well. In fact, you're showing us data here. You're showing us nice analytical data. Tom is collecting from all the different groups analytical data. I still believe that I can integrate this better than any analytical model eventually. I don't think I'm there yet. I am working on teaching myself by watching myself and doing this and looking at my misses. I still learn more from my misses. I spend more time on a judge feedback session with my misses than I do on my hits. That's my belief system. And I'm still trying to learn about this. And I'm learning how to balance it in a way which is what you're trying to do with dung beetle analytically. And I mean, I think it's great. And I think one of the things you might want to consider is doing a webinar, which will advertise through app, through other means, to get people to join your group. Get people to start another group using dung beetle. I'd love nothing more than that. That'd give us more data. So everything you said everything you said, frankly, I agree with. And I understand your frustration in that you can't get more people to go with it. But it's an agreement at the level of the concepts I totally agree with. Whether or not your analytical model is going to do better than the human mind, you know, my view is that we're quantum computers. It's clear on which side you came during the great debate at the workshop, but you haven't demonstrated enough. But I would in fact, I really do encourage you to try to get more members in your group and get people to start other groups using dung beetle to teach them how to do that. I'm going to do that with one ARV. In fact, maybe you and I can put a workshop together and we'll try to convince the same group of people to join either your group or my group. We ought to talk about that. But you have to understand that I understood what you said. Your technique 5 years from now, 1 year from now, may still be at 75%. If it is, I will be in one of your groups or I will be managing a dung beetle group. You see what I'm saying?
Right. Oh.
Okay. But I'm totally encouraging of you going forward and trying to get more people involved.
Okay. Well, on a side note, that whole thing I showed, which kind of explains some of the displacement possibilities.
That's correct, Gordon. That's relevant to your question. It could have just been one of those chance things.
Let's see. I wanted to point out during your talk, Marty, you were talking about getting people to focus on their feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And I sent this out, I don't know whenever, but this is an example of what I give out to my viewers and what they actually see after every session.
Okay.
And I pretty much force people, everyone to follow this feedback procedure. So basically I give them a link. And this link is basically a survey. And they have to fill out this survey. And I'll just doing.
Yeah.
And so they're required, okay, in 3 words, describe this feedback image. Birds, white, feeding. And you'll notice that after
I love it.
after every question, they're forced to look at their feedback pretty much like multiple times. On a scale of 1 to 5, how do you feel? How good was this target? It was a horrible target. Confidence ranking. What would you give yourself? I'd give myself a 7.
See, Alexis.
And they submit, and that's it. You basically you force them to interact with their feedback. They see their feedback like, I don't know, 5 or multiple times, and on top of this, I then give the viewer a judging feedback, and they'll basically get an email from me after I receive the confirmation that they did their session. I'll give them a feedback, another feedback, and basically it shows all the stats that I did on them, and it shows their performance and all that. I mean, that's, I guess, a one solution that, or alternative that you might want to consider.
I like that.
So how do you enforce them doing this? Do you just tell them they can't be viewers anymore if they don't do this?
You don't get your feedback.
Yeah, they're forced to. If they don't want their that's the only way they get their feedback.
Okay.
So I
love this.
I do too.
I love it. It's really easy. It's kind of fun, and it's so nice and neat. You know, you just kind of don't feel like you're doing any work.
Right.
Alexis, I really do like that, and I like that. And are you saving this stuff eventually? Well, look, eventually we're going online. You remember the way I did it, which was encouraging feedback. I gave it to them by giving that group summary, which I unfortunately have stopped because I'm running out of time. And I hope someday to get back to it because I thought that was important. In fact, that's a negative within me, which I am working on. And I'm either going to have to start doing it again. But the fact that you did that online, when we get online, I will actually add something like that. I am very impressed. That is an excellent idea. Because it, in my way, I kind of force them to look at it again, and they would find where their good stuff was, which was a way of, enhancing the feedback. I think your way is better.
Okay.
And I will be able to do that once we start getting things online, which Tom is getting closer and closer to.
Are you building your data set too, Alexis? I figured that's what you were doing to gather I don't know if that's the entropy or what that is, but where you gather the actual attributes for a photograph, and so if somebody has those, then you're better able to judge it?
No, it's completely just a way to trick the viewer into actually engaging with the target.
Really?
All this.
I kind of figured you were doing what Ed had done when he gone out to those 75 people or whatever and sent them the photographs and told them to, say what that was, because you're gathering that data. At some point you could use it for that.
Yes, at some point, eventually, but it's just like it's one viewer doing it's not enough data, but it's there eventually. Like, for example, for this particular picture, we now know it was pretty average. It was a pretty average picture, and next time I know not to use it because nobody really liked it, kind of thing. So yes, in a way, the answer to your question, I'm not doing it for that reason, but later on it could certainly be applied in what you were saying.
Because I thought that's brilliant. I mean, it serves so many purposes at once.
Right.
And Marty, to your point about those composite feedback photos, which I love, I guess in the interim, because one of the things with ARV for Fun is trying to provide that feedback, to everybody,
know.
not just people in the group. But if we could just, I don't know if it would be okay with everybody, but they're not posting their own transcripts. But if I could get the transcripts from you directly, then I've been posting some for Patrick because he's been sending them to me. That would make it easy for me to post them up there because they haven't been using that little tool I've got.
Yeah, I was hoping they would do that as a substitute for what I was doing. Did they was the feedback you're getting from the target summary idea a good one?
Yeah, I don't really know. I know I personally liked it, because then I could see how what I was doing fit in with the whole thing, and I could kind of see sometimes when I didn't have a particularly good session how you made the decision that you made. So it was good for me from a learning perspective on judging, to get the kind of feedback. But so I that's one reason I liked the composite maybe more so than seeing individual transcripts. But in lieu of that, I do like seeing the transcripts.
Okay.
But it takes time. Everything takes time.
Well, that's exactly right. In fact, Alexis, okay, and I'm really going to try to get back to the summary or some equivalent, or just get people to really pay more attention to the feedback. I think what Alexis and I have recognized is that in spite of saying the words, and in spite of people even believing feedback is important, they don't do it. And both of us were coming up with different ways of trying to get people to spend more time on it. Alexis, let me ask you a different question. How much time do you spend doing your judging, getting the inputs into Dung Beetle?
It takes me about an hour.
For how many?
Yeah, an hour or hour and a half for one person.
For one person.
Yes. For like the way I do it, it takes me like an hour and a half to. Let's see.
So if you had a group of 5,
that's my big problem, Alexis. If it's taking me that long to do one person, there's no way I'm going to do it.
Well. First off, to do all this analysis right here? If you were to do all this analysis right,
we're not seeing your screen. We're not seeing your screen anymore.
I gave it back to you. Can you give it back to me?
Yeah. Let me give it back to you.
And Alexis, I also wanted to ask, are you getting the viewers to enter their stuff, or are you doing all this yourself?
No, the viewer enters all the, I guess what like for the judging feedback and
no, I'm talking about the perceptions.
The perceptions. Okay, so
no, that's what he does. That's what takes an hour and a half, right?
So the viewers don't do any of that then.
Right, they don't. So this is what I get from a remote viewer, and
you have to type all that stuff in. That's what's taking so long.
I force them to, part of being in my group.
Oh, they type it in.
Yeah, they type it in, and basically it's all a matter of copy and paste. And
so what takes you the hour and a half then?
Just setting everything up. So I'll take that and then I'll just paste it. And so most of these right here, did you see how that was like magic? Do you see?
Well,
it automatically
you have a list somewhere where it's recognizing these keywords.
Right, and that list grows. I got about 1,000 right now.
Okay.
So every time I get a new remote viewing session, I add the perceptions that they give me.
Right.
And what takes me a long time is that whenever I get new perceptions, like this thing would all be blank, I would just manually categorize them.
So you're still getting a lot of new perceptions all the time, in other words.
Right, all the time. But that, eventually all that work is, it's going to be, it's being saved. So it's not going to waste, I guess what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
for sure.
But yeah, so the actual judging itself is, not all that. It's pretty standard.
Right, but
Um,
it takes a long time. Have
right.
you ever
Well,
done self-judging?
yes, I've done self-judging before,
And how
and
does that work?
it's pretty much the same thing. But of course, my sessions aren't as elaborate as some viewers. But I want to hit that point. You said, why should I do this? And I'm saying that the amount of if I were to do this manually, all this data right here manually, and I could do it, it would take me like 16 hours to do it manually.
What do you mean by
doing
manually? We don't understand that. I don't.
Well,
if manually.
By manually, I would look at all these sessions. I would look at all this data right here. I would manually calculate, the percent wrong, percent right, and calculate the categories.
You'd start over for every one is what you're saying, instead of saving it and having an Excel do it.
Right. I mean,
well, sure, that's obviously going to take longer. Why would you think about doing that?
Well, because of
so you're saying that's the way we do it now, and it would take us 16 hours to get the same thing you get in an hour and a half.
Right. That's exactly what I'm saying. Is that this thing right here, projected hit model? That alone, this alone represents Marty's past data of like 1,500 sessions, and it totally just analyzes, based on the numbers. That's what am I trying to say?
What you're trying to say, Alexis, is this is a great model.
Well, it's not even that, but the amount of time that you're saving, the amount of time that you're gaining just by doing this. You're investing an hour and a half to get 16 hours worth of analysis. And this analysis is like legit. This projected hit model one is based on 1,500 sessions from your archive. And this is another, another projected hit too. That's another like bunch of hours, invested.
Are you interested in getting other people to be group leaders using Dung Beetle?
Yes, certainly. I mean, I've been trying to get people to observe what I do, because people have this assumption that it's really difficult to do, and it's totally.
Well, it takes an hour and a half per viewer. That's time-consuming, not difficult, but time-consuming.
Right. Well, it's time-consuming, and but they don't see the value of, what does when a remote viewer gets this amount of data, compared to what they get to right now. Right, when they receive a result, they get, oh, I got a miss, and then how much learning is done from that? Not that much learning. But when you give this to a remote viewer, they can totally analyze, their performance, and they can adjust what they need to do. And here they can tell that this person didn't have any smells. This person didn't have any temperatures. This person, did bad in sounds. And, you give this to a session. Is this worth an hour and a half of your time? Is this worth an hour and a half of, entering all this data and then getting all this? It's for you too.
Right.
I mean, you give this to a remote viewer. Who benefits from this? The judge benefits from this. The people who are wagering benefits from this. I mean, right now, when you guys send out a prediction, it's a prediction over and under 8 runs. That's all the data you're giving them to make a decision. As opposed to this, I'm just giving you 16 hours of data. Wager on this. Based on this thing, you make a wager. You definitely feel more confident wagering when you see all this data behind that.
Well, actually, Alexis, I would, except for the fact that, I mean, these numbers don't really mean anything until I understand what kind of hit rates you get with them. I mean, you can say projected hit model 1 is a projected hit model 3 is a hit. But if you don't tell me what your past performance is using that model, then what meaning does that have?
You don't understand how much adjusted percent is. You don't understand that a certain amount is how much within that session has wrong. I mean, you don't understand that there's a
no. Just so
the lowest score I would give
about,
is 3.95.
I understand that line. I do look at your CR numbers when you offer them, but your projected hit models, that doesn't mean anything to me the way you have it there.
now wait, but understand, Alexis, why many of us, and you know, Tom and I agree on this, are waiting to see data. I mean, I think someday when you say projected hit rate, they're going to be able to click on that and up will come a chart similar to the chart I showed for a person, which will be able to show how well Model 1 is done. You see what I'm saying?
Well,
what?
It's a conceptual thing, though. These are all just conceptuals.
No, but with every prediction, you're
basically explain what they are and what data went into them. That's all. That's all I want to know.
It's been explained, I guess.
Okay, well, send it to me again.
Well, like these things right here. I sent you guys an example of this during our bologna sandwich series, and there was no comments on it. It was like, what? Nobody even took the time to look at the example that was given out. And you know, it was you guys admit that it was a good thing. And then, you know, I'm showing these things, but nobody acts on them. You know, it's good. Yes, it's good. But if you don't actually change your behavior, then it's useless. You know.
And here's my suggestion to get people to change their behavior. Look, this is looking very encouraging. It is. I really believe we should have a webinar just on this. And, you know, we spent a lot of time here. So in some ways, this is a preliminary webinar. When this recording goes out, you know, this will be part of it. And we can tell people that, you know, go back to, you know, 60 Minutes and you'll hear all about dung beetle in more detail, and then come to a webinar where we're going to really explain it and you can ask questions and stuff like that. Are you open to doing that?
Certainly, yeah.
Okay. So I say we can definitely do that. So we just have to come up with what you think is a reasonable time, give you some time to organize a presentation, and then we'll do it. But there's no but. We're at just the right spot, and this is the next step. With that, though, you need to show your 75% data. That is a key thing in terms of getting people to, you know, want to join the group. And it looks like you're at a good spot to do that. And, you know, you've got the data. Tom has the data.
You know, so some people go for the approach of the hit rates. I literally don't care about the hit rates. The hit rates mean nothing to me. And the main value of using the dung beetle is the learning opportunity that you get from the data that it spits out. I mean, a
learning opportunity to improve what? Your inner being, separate from a hit rate?
On your remote viewing performance.
As measured by... The only reason a hit rate is out there is because it's a measure of performance. I mean, that's what the hit...
That's not what it is. The hit rate is a measure of how the judge was able to interpret what the remote viewer put out. I mean,
that's true. I accept that. The hit rate is a measure of how well the group is working together. Right. I agree.
And this one right here, this is individual performance. I mean, it doesn't matter if the prediction was a hit or a miss.
Right. We keep individual hit rates as well.
But not at this level, though.
No, absolutely not. And
I would really like to hear more about how to interpret the feedback, because what you were just
Yeah.
talking about with the graphs and everything,
Yeah.
it's so new. It's so
Right.
different. And I think that people really don't appreciate it to the level that we should because we don't understand it. You're so far ahead of us, Alexis. You really are, at least me. So I would really appreciate if you would spend some time. I know you've done some stuff on reliability and stuff like that, and I would really love to understand it better.
You're saying, hey, let's have that webinar, huh?
I am, and I
Yeah.
think, you know, one that really focused on the individual, on how to improve, on how to take the information that you get back, whether it's from your process, Marty, or from this dung beetle process, either way or both. But I mean, we've done some on your process, Marty. It would really be great to really delve into this so that when you get back this feedback, you can really understand it, because I know you've given me some direct feedback on it, and I appreciate that, Alexis, and you probably have for everybody else too, but I don't think your average person who's out there in some of the other groups really understands what you're doing.
Okay, this is beautiful. Why don't you give me back the screen, Alexis? Let's see if we can wind this up. And let me say, you know, I just never want these to go more than 2 hours. Let me say that I find it quite interesting that both Alexis and myself are starting to emphasize more and more the learning power of each of our approaches, because as I'll say eventually when I give my webinar, and I think Alexis has got so much that he ought to do his on his own, but one of the things about 1ARV is just that. It is a approach which allows a remote viewer to learn an awful lot, independent of the judge, because the wild card is something which the judge has nothing to do with. So I just think that's all so valuable. Okay, let's. I want to show one more here. Hold on. Here. And okay, I'd like to wrap this up with one last slide. And it relates, of course, to the overall intention. Many of you have seen this before, right? Someone's coming up and trying to figure out something important, like maybe I should cross this out and say, what is the meaning of ARV? And I do think meaning, you know, when you're doing this, it has to be meaningful. It does have to be important to you. Why are you spending all this time on it? So there's got to be some meaning involved in what we're doing here. But this guru's response was exactly right at the level we are now, because we need to get to the point where each of us is basically trusting ourselves. So that's kind of what I would like to leave you with. We're at the point, I believe, where it's this introspective, looking at your own belief, looking at your own actions, modifying those, all consistent with your intentions, working on your attention, working on your expectations, even discovering what your unconscious expectations are is a part of this whole process. And nobody else is going to tell you what those are. You have to look inside. Okay, any other closing comments anybody else wants to make? Okay, are we ready to end this? Then I'll do just that. Thank you all for coming. And I'll get this recording out and a copy of the slides as soon as I can. Okay, take care. Keep precogging.